Good morning, everyone. I am Heather Herring, the Education Manager of NRRA, and I want to warmly welcome you to our summer webinar series as we are in the heat of summer. This morning, we will hear about the best management practices for managing e-waste in New Hampshire transfer stations. Next slide, please. Do you need professional credits? You can receive 1 hour of credit from New Hampshire operators from NHDES for viewing this webinar. Webinars are recorded and made available for those who registered. You can complete the survey at the end of the webinar and stay tuned with NRRA. And continue your learning with webinars all summer long. And you can visit our new website at nrrarecycles.org. Next slide, please. For recycling facility operators, we have webinars throughout the summer to choose from and learn. You can register online. Next slide. And for our educators, administrators, and community members, we have webinars to share. Although I list these in 2 different slides, all of our webinars are open to all. Next slide, please. I wanted to set the table for GoToWebinar. You will not be able to be heard by the presenters or other participants on GoToWebinar. If you can't hear the presentation, please click the arrow button next to the audio to choose computer, and otherwise you can choose the arrow next to if you can choose audio as well, computer or audio. And then a question, you can use the questions arrow to ask the presenters, and if they have time, they can answer them. Next slide, please. All right, and now I'm going to introduce our presenter, Tara Albert. She is the SWOT Coordinator for the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And I hand the presentation over to you, Tara.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tara Albert from DES. I want to thank NRRA for giving us this opportunity to have these online sessions. I know it's a little strange that we are not meeting face to face, but this is a great opportunity to get training in and for us to at DES to answer any questions that you may have. So feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation using the questions tab that Heather had mentioned, and I will get to those. So today we are going to be talking about e-waste in New Hampshire and how you need to manage your electronic waste. So the discussion points for today: what is electronic waste? We're going to talk about it as it's defined through New Hampshire statute, and then also we're going to talk about it as it's defined by New Hampshire facilities, because I do find that there are differences there. We're going to talk about the statutory ban, which yes, many of you have already seen, already heard, but we're going to drive that point home. We're going to talk about best management practices, or BMPs, types of recyclers, and we're just going to be focusing on e-waste recyclers, and then touch a little bit on the markets and what are the markets looking for when they're doing the recycling. What part of the e-waste is recyclable? What is electronic waste? So we've talked about statute versus rule before. I want to remind you that when we talk about a statutory definition for a statutory rule, it is state law. It was administered by the legislature, not New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. So this is a state law. So the statutory definition for electronic waste is in RSA 149M 8A. It includes your computer monitors containing cathode ray tubes. Those are those big giant monitors, the ones that weigh 20 pounds. They're not your flat screens. They include laptop computers, liquid crystal display devices. Those are the flat screens. Plasma and LCD televisions, printers, cell phones, copiers, fax machines, and then video display media recorders and players. Those things with the screens, and then anything that records media. So, and Then think about it as a facility. How does a facility identify e-waste? So I've heard many different things. I've heard TVs, computers, and computers equipment. I've heard electronics with a screen. I've heard anything with a cord. So anything else that you want to throw out there, I can help you with that. But I want you to think of how you classify e-waste at your facility. Is it more restrictive than the state law? That's completely fine. As long as your list encompasses what the state has defined as e-waste, you can add any items to that list. If you do that, however, please check with your vendor. Make sure that they'll take the items that you've included. So if you include a toaster in your e-waste collection, will your vendor take that? Check and see if they will. If not, do you have a plan in place for those items? Because when you send it to the vendor, they're going to then just throw it in the MSW or charge you extra for it. So you need to be paying attention to those items. Does anybody have any questions about that? And I'll leave you a second because I know you got to type it in. But if anyone has any questions, I can take them on e-waste, on the definition. All right, I don't see anything coming through. All right. So let's talk about e-waste statutory ban. Remember, this is a statutory ban, so it is a state law. So some electronic wastes were banned from disposal in landfills and incinerators per RSA 149M27. This happened in 2007. The specific items banned are video display devices, CPUs. So CPUs, think about it as your tower, your computer tower. Or non-mobile video display medias and recorders. The reason that these items are banned is because they do contain heavy metals, or they may contain heavy metals, that when they break down, they can leach out into the environment and they cause major human health and environmental problems. So we're talking about lead, cadmium, mercury. All of these items can cause neurological, behavioral issues. They can cause heart issues, many, many, many issues to humans as well as to the environment. So we do not want these things being put into landfill. We also definitely don't want them being put into incinerators where the scrubbers may not catch that. So we don't want any of that going into the atmosphere. So a fun fact, think about those CRTs that you are moving around, whether it's a TV or a computer screen. Each of those contain about 4 to 8 pounds of lead. And the lead that we're talking about is not a solid block of lead. This is lead dust. So think about dust in the heat of New Hampshire when there is no rain and it hasn't rained in weeks, or maybe not weeks, but at least a week. And you break one of these CRTs and the glass breaks, and then the dust. Think about where that dust goes. You don't want to be breaking those. You don't want to be putting them in a landfill. You don't want to be burning them. That dust is the problem. So I do have a question here from Reagan saying that did I say that facilities can be more restrictive than the state's definition? That is completely true. Yes. They can be more restrictive. They cannot be less restrictive. So yeah, good question. All right, so let's talk about facility requirements. So according to the RSA, owners and operators of a landfill or an incinerator must at a minimum do the following things. They must post a sign regarding the ban, the specific electronic waste ban, provide written notification to the facility customers. So that could be the haulers, that could be towns, that could be residents who come to the facility, or they have to have an agreement with their customers. And again, this could be the hauler. They need to have an agreement with the hauler that says, we will not take the e-waste and this is what you must do if you bring this to the facility. So if you do any one of these three things, the either landfill or incinerator will not be considered as quote unquote knowingly disposing of these items. So it's a cover yourself law. It covers the facilities that they're doing the right thing. Now, does this leave all other solid waste facilities off the hook? Not necessarily. It is the responsibility of all solid waste facilities to ensure that the items are not landfilled or incinerated. All other facilities are strongly encouraged to do the same things as the landfills and incinerators to ensure that electronics do not eventually end up in the landfill or the incinerator. So think about it this way. If you are a small transfer station and you are sending your MSW to Wheelabrator for incineration, and at the bottom of that container, there are two TVs, large 1980s, 1960s, 70s TVs with the big wooden consoles. How it made it in the container, who the heck knows? But residents sometimes can be sneaky. They can put things in containers that are not supposed to be there. And it gets to Wheelabrator. Wheelabrator dumps it on their floor. What are they going to do? Are they going to send the entire container back to you and then you have to pay that shipping cost again and pay any cleanup costs? Do you want to have to manage that? Or would you rather have information readily available for your residents and your customers on how to manage it? You know, if you think about it that way, flip it back. So you want to be prepared and you want to have alternatives for your residents and customers. Any questions on the ban at all? And I think I'll give a little bit longer of a break. I'm not. All right. Don't worry, you can still ask questions if I don't get to it right away. All right. So the next section here, we're going to talk about BMPs for eWaste. When we normally talk about BMPs or best management practices for solid waste during solid waste operator training classes, we're talking about how to manage the waste once it comes to your facility. Basically, how to collect it, how to store it, how to get it off site according to your permits, the rules, statute, any other state and local regulations. How are you going to handle it once you get it? But today, we're going to broaden that out a little bit. I want you to think on either end of that receipt of the waste. We're going to talk about best management practices. You need to, step one, think about how to educate yourself. If you are going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. We're going to talk about educating your restaurants, your residents and customers. Most importantly, you need to give them an alternative. What happens when you do not have an alternative for your patrons? You know you're either going to end up with whatever the waste is at your gate, or you're going to end up in an argument, or there's going to be a complaint to the Board of Selectmen, to the permittee, to your boss. Nobody wants that. So let's get this step one so we can do step two. Then we get to step three, which is the collection. We want to determine what type of collection is going to work best for your facility. So today, we're not going to necessarily delve into exactly what you're going to do at your facility, how you're going to do the collection, but we're going to I want you to think while I'm talking about it, about what may be the best option for you, for your facility, for your town, and for your community. So first, let's talk about educating yourself. Vendors. Who are the vendors near you, and who are the vendors used by your neighboring towns? You may have been using a specific vendor for the last 15 or 20 years. They may not be the most appropriate vendor for the waste that you're receiving. You need to do some due diligence and figure out who might be the best vendor for you, and who might the state contract vendor be. Did that change? Then you want to partner. Think about partnering with businesses who have take-back programs, or partnering with neighboring towns. So what type of collection are you currently doing at your facility? Do you collect at your facility? Or might there be someone, a business nearby who is who has a take-back program? So let's look at what I mean by take-back programs. So these are all businesses on this slide. On the left-hand side are all places that have had current take-back programs in the past, say, year or two. On the right-hand side, it says other options, and in parentheses as ever changing. So I'll get to that in a second. So facilities that have take-back programs, Staples. Staples has always had a take-back program where they will take back printers or computers. Best Buy has done the same thing. At one point, Staples was taking back up to 7 items. So a resident may come in and just be doing a clean out of their home. They may say, you know what, we've got these old TVs that we don't need anymore. We've got a printer that has never worked, and we want to get rid of them. And they go to the town, and the town says, well, it's $10 for this TV, $5 for this, for a printer, it's this much. Or you can go to Staples and it's free. So educating yourself on the different businesses who are in your community that may have take back programs that are free will help you and help your residents. There's also Goodwill. They work with Dell Reconnect. They will take computers back and they will scrub those computers. They will clean them out and get rid of all the data that is on the computers. Then we've got Call to Recycle. You may not think of cell phones necessarily and batteries as e-waste, but some of them are. Think about the size of some cell phones that are out there. They are larger than 4 inches in diagonal, so they're considered e-waste with a screen. So Call to Recycle can take those items. Wireless carrier stores, again, Verizon, any of those types of stores, they may take them back. And then brand owner mailback programs. Now, I know if you've got a Sony TV from 1980 that is a CRT, Sony is not going to take that TV back as a mail back item. That's just ridiculous. However, there may be a brand, Dell might be taking computers back. If you take the batteries out and manage the computer itself in one manner and the battery separately. So let's get into this other side where we talk about other options, the ever changing. This is the fun list. This list changes almost daily sometimes. So think about Radio Shack. Are there any more Radio Shacks that are still open and available? I don't know. They seem to close and open and change. Ace Hardware at one time had a state contract with the state of New Hampshire. That contract has lapsed. However, they may pick it up again where they will start taking electronics. Think about what's going on with COVID-19. What have we seen from Sears? Many Sears stores have gone under, or they've been closing their Sears stores. So if their stores are starting to close, are they going to have an electronic waste collection event? Probably not, but we don't know that. Another interesting one that popped up for about 6 months was Costco. They had wanted to do an electronics take back, and they set it up, and residents could come in and bring whatever electronics they wanted for a small fee, and then they realized that they did not have the proper recycler to take the waste. So it's really paying attention to what's going on in your community. You may once a month call around to different facilities and say, okay, Goodwill, are you having any events coming up? Home Depot, are you taking any electronics back? What are you taking back? And then having that material ready and available to your residents. So that's one option, take back programs. Another way to educate yourself, and this one is really, really important, and it's one of those things that we don't necessarily think of until we get there. Oh, there's a question from Reagan. Is there somewhere? Currently, there is not a document on the website summarizing take-back options. A one-page flyer transfer stations could post or hand out. So the one thing with New Hampshire is with the ever-changing companies, not all companies are located in certain areas. When we talk about this in a second, we're going to talk about associations. I want you to pay close attention to, hold on, let me see, laser pointer. To pay close attention here to regional planning commissions. So Reagan asked if there was a document readily available on DES's website that offers information on companies that do take back programs. We do not. However, quite frankly, these regional planning commissions, many of the planning commissions are very active in having material readily available for their solid waste facilities. This is something that regional planning commissions should put together, and facilities can ask them to do so. So with this slide, what I was talking about is basically if you're stuck and you're not exactly sure who to turn to in regards to who's properly recycling items, there are associations out there can help you in that effort and the differences between these associations. So let's talk about eStewards Initiative. They define and promote electronics reuse and recycling best options. They can provide you with information on your chosen e-waste recycler. So if you choose Sears, you can look up Sears and see who Sears is using for their recycler. But more importantly, the eStewards, they look a step further and they look at companies like Veolia and determine how they are actually managing the recycling. Where is it going? Think cradle to grave. Another association that does that is SERI, so the Sustainable Electronics Recyclers International. They can basically do the same thing as the eStewards, and they can assist you in finding recyclers internationally as well, and they have more information on these companies. And then we'll go back up to EPA. EPA has additionally a list of the certified electronics recyclers. So the two initiatives that, or the two companies that are certifying these companies are SERI and eStewards, and we will talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. They will do the due diligence necessary, compile the data, and provide it to anyone who's looking to recycle e-waste. All right, and next on the list is regional planning commissions. So we talked about that just a tad bit. Lean on your regional planning commissions. They can help you band together with your neighboring towns. They also know what businesses are in the area that are in that regional area in the state. And then we have a few other associations. We've got NERC, NRRA, and NUMOA. So NERC is the Northeast Recycling Council. And then you've got NRRA, which is the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, and then NUMOA, who is the Northeast Waste Management Officials Associations. These associations can assist with electronics recycling ideas. They can help you with the up-to-date numbers and what is going on in the state of the world. The additional thing, which is great with NRRA, is they can help you with your e-waste contracts. They can work with companies, they can help do milk runs so that your neighboring town, the company can come out and do a milk run and pick up from all the neighboring towns and see if you can get the best price possible. And talking about pricing, we also have state contracts. So the state contract is ever changing with electronics recycling. That is something that I normally do not handle. That's something that Dean Robinson with HHW, he keeps track of all of the state contracts out there. So when you arm yourself with this information, it will help you when you're attempting to educate your customers and also determining how your collection should be run. So this way you are armed with which company you're using for recycling, how much it is, where are your wastes going, and does it make sense for you to be having a collection at your facility or to not have a collection at your facility? So let's talk about educating your residents and your customers. So there are many opportunities for us to educate. We have some information available for the public as well as you. They're on our website. We also, the other associations that I previously mentioned, they also have information. You need to know why these items are banned. Having the environmental and health reasons will help you. Also, educate your residents and customers on items that they can donate. If they've got a TV that is still working, they just went from a 32-inch TV to a 70-inch TV. Why somebody needs that TV, that's that big, I don't know. But educating them on, hey, if this is still working, there may be somebody in your community who could use their still working TV. Don't just throw it away. Send it for reuse. You want to rethink those items. You want to offer information on the take back program. So this is where we had talked about what companies are out there that can take your e-waste back. Who is in your community that can take it back? Data destruction. Make sure that you talk to People, when they come in, when they bring you a computer, you want to make sure that your data is not still on there. If you do your taxes on that laptop, you want to make sure it's not on there. And whatever company you're using that's going to be taking the waste, you providing that information to your residents and customers and say, okay, this company is taking your computer. They do data destruction or they do not do data destruction, and providing that information. So I've given you those few bullets. Some people do not give a hoot about the environment or any of these things. So you do need to have multiple things to tell them. So the top 3 things that on top of the environment that I want you to tell your residents and your customers. Money. It costs you to dispose of these items, and even having how much it costs. So then they know that they're paying to have these items taken away. They're not paying you to have the items taken away. Second, money. If they put it in the hopper, it's going to cost you and eventually them to dispose of these items, because it's going to come back to them in either taxes or some other way. It will come back to the residents. Third thing, money. If they continue to do it wrong, you will eventually not allow it any longer, and they will have to find another, most likely more expensive option for disposal. So I hate to put it in the terms of money, but people listen when they realize that they're having to pull money out of their pocket to pay for things that could cost a lot less. All right. Collection. This is where we start talking about step 3. You need, after learning education for you, education for your residents, we need to talk about collection. Determine what makes the most sense for you. And when I say you, I mean your facility. There are 2 basic different options. You've got a one-time event and you've got a permanent collection. So when we're talking about a one-time event, this time of year is perfect. It's right for those HHW days. I know COVID-19 has kind of thrown a huge monkey wrench in that, but think about those HHW days and how many people come out to dispose of their waste. So you've got those HHW days. Is there an opportunity there to partner with the event? Is there space large enough where you can add on an electronics event with the HHW day? You can partner with those vendors and neighboring towns to have those, to get rid of everything all at once. You could do a fundraiser. I know that sounds a little weird, but having a fundraiser as an idea to get rid of electronics events and then get rid of them properly. Is there a local school in town, or this would be a great Eagle Scout project. You're getting electronics managed properly. You're teaching how to manage an event and manage people, and it's a large event if you're going to be doing it for an entire community. The other option, like I said, is permanent collection. This is all about the storage. Do you have the storage and do you have the need? So let's look into storage and need. So you need to make sure that when you collect electronics, they are kept under cover. And what I mean by that is kept out of precipitation. Recyclers do not want items that are full of water or rain or snow or ice. They don't want to be dealing with that. You need to keep it under cover. And remember, when we say undercover, it does not rain straight down in New Hampshire. It rains sideways. So you basically need a storage container, as you can see pictured here. There are 3 storage containers. You want to have the items marked. You need to identify what is stored in this area. So many of these electronics are also considered a universal waste, which is a subset of hazardous waste. Think about those CRTs. Those are a universal waste, but they are also an eWaste. You need to make sure that they are clearly marked as to what is in there. Also, prevent breakage. You want to prevent it because the whole item is generally benign. When the items are broken, there's a possibility that these hazardous materials, that's when they start leaching out into the environment and potentially to patrons. So when you have those CRTs, when you have the LCDs, printers, think about printers. What is in the inks? You want to make sure that they are whole and they don't have the potential to leach out. You also need to comply with the universal waste rules as they are applicable. So those rules are ENV HW 1100. Remember, you can only store universal waste on site for up to 1 year. So what that means is once the first universal waste item gets put in the container, you need to mark it with that date. They must be actively managed, and then all of the items mentioned above under cover, clearly marked, and prevented breakage. So it's pretty simple, pretty easy, but you need to have the space in order to do that. Okay, so let's talk about safety. So no matter what type of collection you have, whether it's an event or an ongoing storage, you need to be very mindful of safety. It's kind of broken up into two separate groups of people. You have your operators, where you can include volunteers here as well, and then everyone else. And actually, you can include volunteers as well here. So think about with operators, your ergonomics. TVs, CRT TVs are heavy. They are starting to come in more and more as people are getting rid of their flat screen TVs. Ergonomics, do you think that you want to be carrying a 60-inch CRT? No, you need to make sure that you have the proper people to move those containers and move those items, or you have to have the proper equipment to move those into a container. You need to be mindful of electric shock. So whether these items are working or not working, or unplugged or plugged in, not plugged in, there still is the potential for electric shock there. You've also got hazardous materials. We've talked about this: lead, dust, mercury, other heavy metals. You just be prepared, be mindful. And when I say mindful, also educate. Educate your volunteers that are there. You guys come to solid waste operator training and you know that you are dealing with hazardous materials. Educate those people that are assisting you. And then, of course, you've got the bruises and scrapes and cuts and things like that. Have your first aid kits there. I'm telling you, moving big, heavy equipment and lugging it around, you're going to get those types of things. So when we talk about everyone else, if you were having a collection event, think about your traffic flow. Do you want your CRTs and your electronics stored right next to your MSW containers? Maybe not. Maybe you do. You need to think about how people are going to be coming into your facility. Also, container placement. If you put a container up high, how is someone going to be able to gently place their TV into that container? And if it's down low, what are they going to do? They're going to push it off their vehicle straight into a container so it falls and breaks. So container placement becomes very, very important. Data security, having information available for residents on data security and what it means, and when they're relinquishing a electronic to you that may have data in it, what is being done with it. And then I know this picture looks a little funny, but seriously, no dumpster diving or picking. There needs to be someone there that's educating residents. Hey, you cannot go pick that TV up out of there. Or even volunteers, you cannot go in there and pick the TV up. Once it's in the container, leave it in the container. No dumpster diving or picking. It's just a safety issue there. So does anyone have any questions about the basic BMPs for managing waste, e-waste? Wait a little longer for question. It's very strange being on a webinar, I'll let you know. Okay, I don't see anything right yet. So let's talk about types of recyclers. You've got the good, the bad, and the ugly with recyclers. This image hit me kind of hard when I was putting this presentation together. It's thinking about your recycling your computer. You've got your advantages and your disadvantages. So advantages, there are health benefits. If you are choosing the proper recycler, there is a health issue there. If you're choosing the wrong recycler, you don't know what they're going to be doing. You want to make sure you're choosing someone who is looking out for whoever is taking those computers apart. You want to make sure that they're managing it properly, that they're letting their workers know what the health concerns could be. There are also economic benefits if you are managing your recyclables through a proper company. They're pulling out the hazards, and they're managing the plastics and all of the items that are coming out of the assets that are coming out of your recycling. There are economic benefits. There's also more jobs. If there are more well-paying jobs, if people are managing these items properly, you're conserving your natural resources. It supports the community. It supports your community and the community where the company is, if they're managing properly. And then it also prevents the abuse of resources. Now, disadvantages. There are toxic materials. There is, you have to sort out. So if you are doing just computers and you're recycling just computers and the company that's coming to you, then you have to sort out computers from everything else. They're preventing donation of computers when they're recycling them, but computers are ever changing. If you're going to donate a computer that's 5 years old, there's not going to be too much of a use to that computer because it's going to be surpassed as soon as someone buys it. And then you've got identity theft. Again, data destruction. You want to make sure that the company that you're working with who is going to be taking your computers, your vendor, they are going to be managing data destruction with that. So the advantages definitely outweigh the disadvantage. You just need to be prepared and understand the differences between them. All right, so let's talk about types of recyclers. When I started putting this presentation together, I worked with NRRA, and I had no idea the types of recyclers and the different types of recycling. I was just thinking, oh, they're just going to recycle. But what is it that they're doing? You have 5 different types of recyclers. They're asset recovery, reuse, repair, remanufacture, demanufacturing, shredders, and then you've got the brokers. So asset recovery, they basically want to gain the metals and recover anything that they can bring in money. They are going to pick apart whatever the electronic is and get the most out of that material that they can. And then you've got reuse, repair, and manufacture. That's basically one step above recycling. They're not going to actually recycle it. They're going to reuse it. They're going to fix whatever's broken in it, remanufacture it, and then send it on its way. You've got demanufacturing, you've got shredding. You've got those people who are just going to take that material in, they're going to shred it up, recycle it, smelt it down, and they may not be looking for the biggest bang for their buck. And then you've got a broker. That's the middleman. That's the person who's going to come in, look and see what you have, and then say, okay, these materials are going to go to this company here. These materials are going to go over here, and these materials are going to go over here, and they're going to separate it out for you, and then they'll call the final place for it. So you want to make sure when you're, regardless of the type of recycler you're choosing, that you use a certified company. Remember, we talked back in the very beginning of this presentation about the eStewards Initiative and SERI. They both provide certifications for e-waste recyclers. SERI's program is called R2 Certified. Oh, there it goes. So SERI's program is called R2 Certified, and then you've got the eStewards. So you want to make sure you're using a certified company. So what exactly does that mean? You know, when we say certified, it's a term that we put out there. It's a facility that has received a third-party audit that's verified that it meets the requirements of either R2 or eSteward standard. What that means is that company has a checklist. They're worried about, or they're concerned about their worker health and safety. They make sure that they meet OSHA standards, other types of standards that might be out there for worker health and safety. They receive their regulatory and permitting compliance. So they actually apply for any permits that they need, and they stay in compliance with the laws and rules. Data security. They make sure that they are securing any data that may come in that was not scrubbed before it got to their facility. They're managing that hazardous waste properly. They're disposing of it properly. They actually have insurance. They have insurance that covers them, and also insurance that will cover their workers, and they may actually have an insurance policy for you. And they have a closure plan. If they are going to close their facility down for whatever reason, say, hey, there's a pandemic, we need to close. They have made sure that they have a closure plan in place and they follow it. I don't know if any of you remember, there was a company in New Hampshire that was collecting CRTs, and they just shut their doors one day, and they had thousands of CRTs in this warehouse with no thoughts of removing them or recycling them. They just kind of sat there. These certified companies have financial assurances also built in. So if they do walk away, they have a financial assurance plan, so it's not going to fall back on the companies who provided them with the waste. So I'm going to give you a real life example that's not eWaste, but it's used oil. For any of you who are familiar with the BD Oil waste site, BD Oil mismanaged hundreds of thousands of gallons of used oil. And this is a New Hampshire site. And when they finally went to the site, did a site investigation, found out this company had no financial assurance set into place. So what the state did is they went in, they found all of the receipts, so think cradle to grave. Where did the waste come from? Who was the generator? They went back to every generator and said, okay, you provided this facility with, let's say 10,000 gallons. You owe the state this much per gallon to clean up this site. And I will tell you, Department of Environmental Services was one of those companies that had to pay. And that cradle to grave due diligence was not there. This was a long time ago. It's still being cleaned up, but these are the reasons why these certification programs have started coming out. So any questions on that? I'm not seeing anything come in, but don't worry, you can still ask questions later. All right. So you may be asking yourself, why are these materials being recycled? What is it that's in an electronic that can be recycled? So I'm going to touch on this just a little bit. So when you think about an electronic, there are tons of materials that are in that can be reused. So plastics may go to a company that either reuses it or they burn it for energy, and it saves them money, it saves us money, and then we're not digging in and creating new plastics or new fuel. We're using what we already have. You've got metals. We've talked about precious metals. So there's gold, there's copper, there's aluminum. Then there's also those heavy metals that like mercury and lead. They're all recovered and they're all reused. So then we're not digging into our natural resource banks that are dwindling quickly. And then there's circuit boards. All of these materials have circuit boards. They can all be reused, they can all be repaired, they can all be smelted down. So circuit boards are pulled out. Non-CRT glass. So any glass that does not have the lead in it, it can be repurposed as asphalt, as abrasives, industrial applications. All of that can be reused. So there's a market for all these things. There's also those other things. You've got batteries, they can be reused, they can be recycled. We've got hazardous components. So yes, hazardous components may be reused or recycled. Rather than throwing them into a final hazardous waste landfill, they're reusing all those components. And then you've got CRT glass. Holy moly, there's a ton of materials in CRT glass. You've got lead, of course, and that could be sent to a smelter and reused. You've got copper for metal recovery, glass to glass recycling. I mean, why wouldn't we be doing that? It can be reused or resold, and then it's exported. These are all marketable materials, and this is why e-waste recycling is so important, is because there's so much in each of these items that can be recycled. So any questions on that? No? Okay. So you're probably asking me now, okay, what do I do? What is the best solution? How do I manage this? So this is your job. When you get off of this webinar, this is what I want you to take home. Now, you want to determine if this is your problem. Do you have a problem in your community with e-waste? Do you have an issue, or are you managing it as you should? You may know right off the bat, this is not an issue. Or you may be saying, you know what, I think we need to go back and have a little discussion. What's the best option for your facility? What do you need to do? Do you have the space for a collection? Do you want to do a collection? And then what is the best option for your community? Look around you, look at the schools, look at your demographics. What does your community need for e-waste recycling? And then challenge yourself and make the change as necessary. You also want to educate. No matter what your decision is, if you're making changes, if you're not making changes, let your people know. And when I say people, I mean your coworkers, your permittees, your bosses, your schools, your patrons, your residents. Let everyone that's in your community know how you're managing e-waste, and then use the resources. Remember that list of resources that I gave you of all of the organizations that are out there, especially your regional planning commissions. Use them. Be able to get that information out through your website, social media, have pamphlets at the transfer station, through your schools. Say, this is how we're managing e-waste, and this is why. And this is what it may cost you or your neighbor, or this is how we're going to manage it if you don't manage your e-waste properly. So with that, I'm done with the formal presentation on e-waste. If anyone has any questions at all, I will take them now. Do I have any examples of facility? Okay, so a question came in. Do I have any examples of facilities that had e-waste recycling issues and then improved their management? If you're talking solid waste facilities that were not managing e-waste correctly, there are a few transfer stations that we've worked with. If you're talking about vendors that had e-waste recycling issues, that is managed through our hazardous waste. And I do not have a specific example, but Zach Lorch would be the person to talk to. I know that there was company that had an issue. So transfer stations. So trying to think of, I don't want to throw anyone really under the bus. I can say, so, okay. I can say some of the biggest issues that came about were basically storage. So the e-waste was being stored outside in big piles, and they weren't following the BMPs. So a resident would come in, bring say a computer monitor, and that computer monitor would literally sit on the ground outside until an operator got to it, was able to put it in a container. So that entire process had to stop. They had to have a designated area of where the monitors or any kind of electronic would come into the facility. And if it was too big for the patron to carry it to the storage place, then the operator would assist them bring it from their car directly to the storage area. It's just, you have to think of your storage and how you're going to lay it out. And are you going to allow your resident to put it in that storage area, or do you put it, as an operator, put it in the storage area? Those were some of the biggest issues, is just organization and storage at facilities. Any other questions popping in, Heather?
I don't see any additional questions at this moment, but thank you so much, Tara, for such an informative presentation. Definitely a lot to chew on, you know, just making sure you have things stored correctly and what's involved, and really the certification process of, you know, making sure, you know, the organization you're working with is you know, managing, reusing, you know, breaking down what you're providing to them. That's important to know, like, you know, where the cradle to grave piece. So
yes,
thank you so much. Yeah.
I did want to point out one thing. So there are two documents, just two handouts in the handout section. One of them is the BMPs for e-waste collection and storage. And that's basically on your facility, at your facility. The other one, there were two videos that we came across, one of which is kind of long, but it was a PBS special where it actually followed an e-waste recycler who stated that they were managing their e-waste on the up and up, and it's a PBS that they just kind of followed it all the way through. It's a really interesting video. It's kind of an eye-opening video. I strongly suggest watching both of that video, and then the other one is a shorter video. And the other one is talking about a local organization who recycles, I think it's in New York City, and it's just a local organization. They're taking apart materials, and they're taking people who have had trouble finding work for whatever reason, and it's really interesting. It's an outside the box way of thinking about electronics recycling. I strongly suggest you guys pull down those two PDFs, and you can watch the videos. They're both on YouTube. So thank you, Heather.
Excellent. We'll make sure the participants get those resources. If you want to go to the next slide, please. Awesome. I just wanted to thank our sponsors for the summer webinar series. We have NRRA, and Schnitzer, and the USDA. We will have a survey that will launch immediately after this webinar. It will also appear in your email inbox. We welcome any feedback. You must complete the survey to receive a certificate of participation. And next slide, please.
Yep.
Okay, so to continue our summer webinar series, on Friday at noon, we will have Mark and Emily join us to talk about refill, not landfill. And then on next Wednesday, July 15th at 9 a.m., we will have the Battery of Things Lithium Battery Safety with Sean Plass. And I just wanted to give a plug for the Northeast Resource Recovery Association. We are a recycling nonprofit. We have over 400 members, primarily municipalities, and we were formed nearly 40 years ago. We offer cooperative marketing and purchasing for recyclables. We enable communities to manage their own recycling programs. We offer 40 programs, including municipal solid waste. And we connect sellers of recyclables to purchasers. We also have educational programs and technical assistance, as Tara was mentioning earlier. We offer workshops, facility tours, annual conference, technical assistance, and school club programs. And so I wanted to thank everyone for attending the webinar, and have a happy summer from NRRA.